For more on the novel coronavirus in Asia, we cross to our reporter Bruce Harrison in Seoul, in South Korea. Bruce, a very good morning to you from our side. What's the latest in South Korea?
Well, good evening from my side, and the latest is that the number of confirmed cases here continues to rise, but this wasn't totally unexpected. There's now more than 2,000 confirmed cases here. The death count, unfortunately, now stands at 13 from the coronavirus. But like I was saying, the government expected a spike because what it's doing across the country right now is tracking and testing for positive cases within largely members of a church in South Korea where the virus has spread like wildfire, the Shincheonji Church, in particular their branch in the city of Daegu, which is the epicenter of the outbreak in Korea. A lot of people have become contaminated. And the government believes right now that if it can locate most of the members of this church, test them, find the ones that are sick, treat them as quickly as possible, it can really help cut into the spread nationwide and maybe bring the situation under control.
Do we know what the treatment involves?
Well, it just depends on the severity of the case, actually. So if they test you and the virus is early in development, they may issue self-quarantine guidelines for you. Stay at home, drink plenty of fluids, monitor your temperature. If the fever continues to rise, you may need to seek further help. Go to a local hospital. That is actually a bit problematic right now because there are a lot of cases that are quite serious. And in the city of Daegu, I mentioned, they're struggling to keep up with all the demand of all the sick patients. Really what it comes to is, it's treatment along the lines of, flu symptoms, but this attacks the respiratory system more quickly, especially in the elderly.
As we start to get reports and see visuals from all over the world in terms of what governments are doing to ensure that airports are clean, places where big numbers of people meet are sanitized, it kind of looks scary sometimes. Just give us a sense of what it looks like in especially where you are in Seoul, in South Korea at the moment.
Well, to somebody who's not expecting it, it can look very scary. For example, I flew from Hong Kong back to Seoul to cover the story here earlier this week, and as you're exiting your plane, you're immediately met by several men in full hazmat suits, and they're handing you out name badges that indicate you've just gotten off a plane from either mainland China or Hong Kong. And then you're ushered through a process of filling out travel documents, downloading a smartphone application to record your daily health status. There's hand sanitizer everywhere, and it's a new experience for a lot of international travelers. But it's to keep everyone safe. Beyond that, how do they keep you safe in large, crowded spaces? Well, Seoul government's been spraying disinfectant at the airports. They've been spraying disinfectant on public buses, subways, and in public places. And most importantly, they're encouraging people to avoid congregating in large groups. They're telling protesters to back off, take a weekend off from downtown Seoul, whatever your grievance may be. Avoid movie theaters, avoid sporting events, things like that, until the situation may come more under control.
So as more reports come up of different countries reporting the incidences of this new virus in their countries, there's concern about repatriation processes and the efficacy of the quarantine processes. Is there some level of satisfaction with the processes that are being undertaken in South Korea?
Well, there's specifically a lot of dissatisfaction. Repatriation hasn't come up at this time, but one of the biggest grievances South Koreans have right now with the president here is that he didn't shut down the borders to travelers from China weeks ago. And a lot of people have suggested the reason the outbreak is so bad is because travelers, perhaps from the city of Wuhan or Hubei province, where it's really bad in China, have been able to come over here. It's unclear. The links between China and this church here and the widespread outbreak in South Korea are exactly clear. But people believe that if Moon had taken proper steps up front, it wouldn't have led to this scale of outbreak. South Korea is more on the opposite end right now of restrictions and quarantine. Dozens of countries have either outright banned South Koreans from visiting their country or have put strict quarantine measures in place. Some of those are just limited to targeting the city of Daegu and the surrounding region where there's the most cases here. But South Korea is certainly one of the most targeted countries worldwide right now when it comes to coronavirus bans and quarantines.
Has the government responded and perhaps improved its border controls?
No, the government hasn't responded. President Moon Jae-in, in fact, is being asked online to respond to this directly. More than 1 million South Koreans have actually signed a petition on the website of the Blue House, the presidential office, one, demanding his impeachment, and two, looking for answers as far as to why he didn't shut the borders and why there's been a nationwide mass shortage, things they're very upset about. According to this petition process, so the president has at least a month from the time the petition closes to give an answer to the people. So I think what President Moon is hoping for is that within the next few weeks to a month, he's able to bring this situation under control, and he'll have a bit more leverage when he actually has to face the public and answer to these high concerns. But at this time, no. The government has not bowed to pressure. It hasn't shut the borders down, and it hasn't locked down cities here either. Daegu, which has so many of the cases, the majority of the cases in South Korea, it's still open travel. People can travel among themselves, and travelers are still out in and out of the city.
You were speaking earlier about other countries sending out travel cautions and warning their citizens not to travel to South Korea. But what other impacts are we aware of at the moment?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last question there? What kind of tests?
What other impacts on the country as a result of coronavirus? You were speaking earlier about how other countries have sent out cautions to their
Correct.
citizens in terms of traveling to that country.
Sure, I'd say that the biggest impact beyond South Koreans struggling to travel abroad right now because of the outbreak is the economic impact. Right now the government has dipped into reserves. It's planning to launch an emergency budget to try and help local economies. Domestic demand is down significantly. People just aren't going out as much, especially in Daegu, but in Seoul as well. There's still some activity here, but restaurants, bars, small shop owners in particular are taking a big hit because people are being cautious and they prefer just to stay home. But it's not just the small business economy that's taking a hit. Major industries are struggling as well, and they've been struggling for a long time since the outbreak started in China because South Korea is so reliant on China and its economy. Whether it's the automotive industry or the technology industry here, Samsung, Hyundai, they rely on parts and supplies from China, and those supply chains have been severed in some cases because of a lack of either workers or the ability to transport materials because of the coronavirus outbreak. So South Korea's economic outlook is unclear for the rest of the year. The Bank of Korea actually kept their key interest rate yesterday at the same level. But there's concerns that they may lower that just to try and boost domestic demand, encourage investment and spending, because the outlook is grim.
Yeah, some have called it COVID-19, the risk to global economies. Bruce, thank you so much for that update. Bruce Harrison is talking there for us from Seoul in South Korea.